All right. And we're back on the Rise and Above podcast. Today, my guest is Sydney Curtin. She is an entrepreneur, a business owner. Actually, she owns several businesses, I believe 7 to be exact. But before I get too much further into talking with her and about her, please hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You know what to do there. So I guess without further ado, Sydney, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you again. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I always we were just talking about the intro. I always hate that intro because it to me it feels clunky.
It's that
I
call to
gotta
action, though. It's like it's true. We got to hear these stories, and so I think that it's beneficial. And you know what? People just forget to, because after it's over, like if you save the call to action for the end, it's like it's an afterthought. Now we're just excited about what we just listened to.
right, I'm checking out of this one. So
Yeah.
um all right, so I guess for the listeners, kind of introduce who you are, what you do, and then we'll kind of get into your story a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Sydney Curtin. I am an author, and as you graciously stated, I am also a multi-business owner. So, I do life coaching specifically related to adoption. I'm a birth mom, which really set the trajectory for a lot of my business endeavors. And I own a couple businesses not related to that as well. I own an AI mobile application and have developed and am working on further development of one of my mobile applications. So, yeah, that's who I am and what I do right now. I'm a mom of 3 kiddos, 2 of which I raise in my home.
Um, I guess because AI is such a big topic right now, can you just kind of tell us what the AI system does?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, the AI is actually for the public education system, and it is a curriculum that the public education system can use to replace their current attendance system that will actually incentivize the students to go to class and improve on their test scores with coins that can be redeemed at my actual retail partner stores.
Interesting.
So they get paid to go to class, but in a coin-based system through the retail partners that I have. That's one of them, anyways.
Is this being incentivized in the school system?
Yeah, so we have a
The
couple
school
schools that
districts?
are demoing this right now, and then it will be launched on a national level. Hopefully, we will get through some endorsements through the Department of Education, and we also want to get endorsements from the Worldwide Health Organization, the World Health Organization. So we're working on a couple that will increase its traction, if you will, in the public education adoption. There's a lot of regulations on what schools are willing right now to adopt in terms of AI.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's changing so quickly, so it's hard to it's everybody's unsure about it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's interesting to me because I feel like everything you have going on, or at least most everything that you have going on with your businesses, they all kind of tie together. Um,
Yeah.
they kind of all come to like they're similar in many ways. Like you have your podcast, you have your media company, you have your coaching, you have the education, which all kind of ties into the same kind of like trying to be better and I don't know. I guess I don't know really know where I'm going
No,
with that. But
it's interesting that I was just having this conversation because some people look at everything that I do and they're like, "Oh, she's a jack of all trades." And I really, it's not that I hate that because I appreciate what they're trying to say with it. But there's a saying that I really personally think is really true. It's that the jack of all trades is the master of none.
Mhm.
And I have been really, really blessed to have some amazing people in the corners of each one of my businesses that is an expert at what they do in that business. And my business wouldn't function the same way without them. So my expertise is I really have a deep passion for helping people find their voice after loss or trauma, because I was told my whole life she'll never amount to anything. How can she recover from these things? So people and sales is, and even sales, I kind of lump back into the people because I don't sell anything. I just understand people's need and what they're trying to achieve, and then I have a solution for that.
I think that's very interesting because you're only 26, correct?
27, yeah.
27, and so you you've accomplished a lot in a short amount of time. Um, where did that come about?
To be honest with you, I had to find a new coping strategy. If I'm just being like super vulnerable for the people who can learn from that, I had a drinking problem after my, not problem, but I call it a problem because it affected my ability to find my deeper meaning and potential within myself. So it was never that I was unemployed or that I woke up drinking or anything like that. It was just that it was too much for what I expected of myself. And in order to replace that habit, I had to find something that was constructive to do with that. And I became a workaholic. I always say, people make jokes about being a workaholic, but workaholics used to be addicted to something that was much more dangerous for them than work.
That is very true. Now, I guess I want to get into your story. We had discussed that you gave your daughter up for adoption. It was kind of forceful. I can't talk today. This is terrible.
It's Friday. Like, mentally, just a little bit, right?
Yeah, I just worked all day. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. So you forcibly gave your daughter up for adoption, and then things kind of went south and unexpected. Can you kind of walk us through that and
Sure.
just kind of tell us, I guess, where you're at now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I placed my daughter for adoption in 2019, and it was not something that I wanted to do. So it was, the legal terminology is a coerced adoption. I was 20 years old, turning 21, and I had just gotten out of a relationship with somebody who had actually gone to jail for domestic assault on me. And it was his best friend that I got pregnant with. So it was a spiral of me lacking self-worth in some very extreme ways that just led me to trying to find that anywhere. So when I found out that I was pregnant, I knew very shortly, obviously, that this was not somebody that I wanted to raise a child with. But I've always just had this deep-rooted concept of life having its own intrinsic value. I had a deep held position that her life was not mine to take because of the consequences of my actions. So abortion was never on the table for me for that reason. And I went to the county that I live in to try to figure out, okay, how do I get full custody of my child before she's born? And they said that's not really a thing. The child has to be born in order to petition for custody because we have to be able to prove paternity, et cetera. So lots of valid legal reasons in lots of ways. What that meant for me, though, was that I was risking that he win some form of custody of her, and her safety wasn't something that I was willing to compromise on. In addition to that complicated dynamic, the first words out of my dad's mouth when I told him I was pregnant was, okay, well, we have to go find an adoption agency. And there was never a conversation of what would this look like to raise your daughter. It was, you can't do this. I'm not raising your kid for you, as if he expected that I was just going to pass my child on to him for some reason. So that was sort of the talk track my whole pregnancy was, we're going to figure out how we can set this child up for what's best for her. But he did it in a very coercive and manipulative way.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there.
It's a lot.
So I'm trying to understand how you became the person you are today. And obviously at that point when you got pregnant with your daughter, you were kind of at a low point. Were you kind of always the person you are today prior to that?
I like that question. I'm thinking about how to answer that honestly. I think that I've always had the heart that I have, where I've always prioritized other people's needs above my own. I tend to be harsh on myself. I don't see the good in me. And that's something that has been a really big learning curve for me and beneficial to discover those things. But I had a lot of healing that I needed to go through in order to be the mom and boss, employer, author, coach that I am today, for sure. Yeah,
I was actually just having a conversation with my brother today because I don't know if you know much about my story other than what I've told you, but we had a terrible past, and so we oftentimes use our story to help other people, and especially him because he works in the ministry and with young people, and so he's always having young people come to him and share their stories of things they're going through. And this one child that he's working with is 13 years old, and I guess he has a very abusive home. And my brother texted me last night and was like, "Hey, do you have any advice I can give this kid? Because I'm going to start working with him." And what I told my brother is, look at every successful person there is in the world. They all had a low point. Every single one of them, almost every single one that everybody admires, they've all had a low point and they've overcome. And that has always been the fuel for their fire. And that's what made them successful.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of interesting. I don't know much about your story, but listening to your story, there I could see that moment where you're at your low, and then you had this fire within you, and then now you're this successful person.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because, you know, part of the reason that my dad was really influencing me in those ways to choose adoption was because growing up, I had a mom that had a drug addiction. And so when I was turning 13 years old, she took her life to that drug addiction. And my brothers and I'm the oldest of three. There's a decent age gap. I don't know how close you and your brother are in age.
Like 2 years.
Okay, so that's how close my brothers are. So I'm the oldest by 5 years, and 7 years is the age gap between my youngest brother and I. So I almost didn't graduate the fourth grade because I would jump the school fence to go home. We had a school neighborhood right there. And I've actually never told the story on a podcast before, but I would hop the school fence. We had a really big field, and I'd run home to make sure that my brothers had been fed and that my youngest one had been taken out of his crib while my mom was still alive. My dad was trying to build a business during the '08 recession, and he actually made that business flourish. And it was the number 4 producing of its franchise in the nation. But it was at the sacrifice of my mom hiding this closet addiction at home and me being too young to understand that that's what it was, and just knowing that if I wasn't there to take care of my brothers, then nobody would. So that was what started the deep-seated, these are the things that need to be healed in me. Of course, like all of the things that spiraled from there, and there's some movie-worthy stories within that. But when my mom passed away, my dad wanted, and I think this is normal, when people go through something traumatic, they want to define it so that they, in their own ways, have a sense of controlling it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he went to a psychiatrist. My mother at this point is no longer here, but he wanted a diagnosis for what this was. Why did this happen? How could I have stopped it? How can I prevent these things? How do I teach my children so that they don't take this path in life? Well, the psychiatrist said, well, without obviously seeing her, I can't diagnose her, but based on what you're describing, I would think that she suffered from a form of bipolar or borderline personality disorder. Those symptoms are, this is why I hate psychology, even though it's what I studied. It justifies away sin. My mother's addiction was a choice, and I know that those things are mentally inhibiting and that they become a physical thing, and that's what treatment is for, but it removes accountability when you label something and say you cannot prevent this or help this because you are fill in blank with that label. Well,
that's an interesting thought, because there's so many people that say that addiction is hereditary, and there's not really much you can do about it other than, like, obviously you have a choice to drink or not. But what I, from my understanding, from what somebody had explained to me, there's almost like a valve,
yeah.
and in your brain. And so, like, when you feed that, when you feed that addiction, the valve goes down, it's flowing through. But then when you stop it, you have that desire, and then I don't know, it's I can't remember exactly how it was explained to me.
No, it's a really good point, because to your point, addiction does have biological components. So I'm not saying that some people, for example, can struggle with an addiction, and when they get sober, it's easy for them to stay sober thereafter. Some people aren't like that. It's chemical imbalances in the brain. It's parts of the brain that are higher functioning than others that make people crave, I need to level this out, or I need to increase this. It's just that psychology does a really bad job holding people accountable for their actions by explaining that away. So yeah, absolutely a biological component in both. I just really fundamentally have an issue with people lacking accountability in their actions. But that's what my dad was trying to do. He was trying to explain this away, because if he can label it in his mind, he can control it. And he did the same thing to me. He gave me this label because I was my mother's daughter. And that was why, in his mind, or a leading component of why I couldn't raise my daughter, was because I could never be anything more than these labels.
What kind of labels would you say?
He tried to give me the same things that my mom had. He tried to say that I had some form of borderline or bipolar, which is not on my medical record, and I do not have.
That had to be frustrating as a young person.
Very much so, because until a certain legal age, I don't have even bodily autonomy to decide that I don't want to be on these mood stabilizers or these antidepressants. It was, as soon as I left the house, off of them, done.
So, wow, that's crazy. So what was it like coming off of that?
Scary and freeing. It was scary because I'd been told for so long that I needed these things to function. It was freeing because I knew that the God that I loved and served was bigger than any label that I could be given, regardless of if it was true or not.
Did you grow up religious?
No.
I feel like I'm all over with these questions, but
No,
I'm just
okay. The story's kind of, I mean, like it's messy. Life is messy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just curious because you have at a very young age, you're pretty faith-based. So
yeah, so I remember my dad got saved when I was, I think, 5. And so we would be the holiday churchgoers. We'd go every once in a while. I remember really resenting the idea of any God that could exist because it was the space that our family put on Sundays, as if our entire life was falling apart the other 6 days of the week. So I just I hated it. I resented it. I didn't like the people there. It was like, what the hell is this? And I had a really impactful sermon that saved me, and I gave my life to Jesus in a coat closet at a community college. That was crazy. I did, or a chair closet. Sorry, not a coat closet. It was where they kept the extra chairs for when they had conference meetings and things like that. It was wild. It was my first real encounter with God. But when I got saved, he wanted to clean out all these closets, and I said, thanks, but no thanks. Like, this is stuff that I've been burying my whole life. I don't want to deal with it. And that hence falling right back into my sin nature is what led me to being pregnant with my daughter. So I guess by the time I was pregnant with my oldest daughter that I went through the adoption process with, I did have that faith-based component of why her life had intrinsic value. But I remember even in high school when I wasn't a believer, just having this internal dialogue of why would you kill a baby if you decided to commit the act,
Right. Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, it's just, honestly, it's an easy way out too. You were talking about accountability. I really cannot talk. Accountability. It's the easiest way to not have accountability.
It is. And it's way too liberally used in the sense that people treat it now like it's a form of birth control. And so there's way too many effective forms of it, which is why I knew after all of these talk tracks, I had friends at this point in my life that had gotten pregnant in high school or early on were no longer in the relationships. And I always encouraged them to keep their child. So I knew that I would be being a hypocrite if I did anything less than at least give her life.
Yeah. So how old is she now?
She just turned 6 in July of this year.
Okay. So when you gave birth to her, I've talked to other people that wanted to put their child up for adoption. You did it prior to giving birth, right?
The law states, so I work for a nonprofit organization called Unplanned Good. I'm on the board of, and we're actually actively working on changing the laws regarding adoption for a lot of reasons. It's not in support of the adoptee, which I'm also adopted from a different context. And it's not in support of the birth mother. It's primarily with the focus of the adoptive family at the center, which is not how adoption should be. It should always be child-centered.
But it's because they're the ones actively looking for a child, correct?
It's money is what it really is, unfortunately. It's where are the tax dollars allocated? And that's how a lot of politics are, unfortunately. But so I didn't place her prior to giving birth because they don't let you. They make you be off of pain medication for it's 48 or 72 hours. I can't remember off the top of my head before you are allowed to sign relinquishment papers. And that was the most traumatizing day of my life.
That's what I was going to get. That's what I wanted to get to, because I've talked to people that considered putting their child up for adoption, and they say that when they gave birth, they couldn't do it.
I didn't think I could. I remember the only person in my life who came to me and said, you can do this if you want to, was quite literally the nurse on my last day at the hospital. She came in while I was breastfeeding my daughter because she stayed in my room with me because I didn't want to. I was waiting for God to give me some sort of helicopter or airplane in the sky with a banner that said, you can do this. But I was so deeply concerned that generational trauma would repeat itself with what her biological dad had been through, what I had been through, the relationship of co-parenting in that type of toxic environment. I mean, this dude was crazy, and I've forgiven him since. So without airing all of his stuff in the internet, he was wildly unstable to raise a child with. And I wanted better for her than what I felt I had to offer at the time. So in my mind, I had been convinced that this was the most selfless thing that I could do. And I wouldn't have done it if I didn't believe that, especially in light of what's happened now.
Do you regret doing it?
Yes. But I don't regret adoption. I regret the laws not supporting me having an environment that I could have protected her from all of the outside circumstances, like in this perfect world where I control everything, right? Because I'm God. So I joke about that. What I regret is not knowing what questions I needed to ask in order to find a family that would best meet the needs of my daughter and I. Of course, I wanted to raise her, but I wanted her to have a mom and a dad that had been married, had a home, that had stable jobs or careers, that she could witness a healthy marriage. I didn't witness a healthy marriage. My parents' relationship was toxic as hell. And that was apparent in the relationships that I had had. I wanted her to know what stable love looks like.
So if you could wave a magic wand and make things different and change the system to how you would want it to be done for everybody, what would you change?
I have, let's see here. This is the book. And I know it's flipped probably on the screen.
Nope.
So what it is it's quite literally just, it's questions. It's all of the questions that I would have asked, because before you marry somebody, there's like premarital counseling workbooks that people will often read or work through, or they'll do with a counselor or whatever.
What was the name of the book again?
Courageous Considerations.
All right. Okay, I'm just going to put it up.
Yeah, sorry, it's probably backwards on my camera.
Oh, you're good. Let me share it.
The context of it, though, is that before somebody gets married, that's it. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Before someone gets married, they read or do these premarital counseling classes or courses, or the book, even if it's just amongst themselves. Lots of people do things like that so that they can avoid the 5 major topics that we statistically know lead to divorce. Well, what I did was I took the same principles of a premarital counseling workbook and I translated that into a pre-placement adoption workbook. Can it be used after placement is already done? Yes, it's never too late to reevaluate the foundation of your relationship in such an intricate relationship dynamic. But it really is for as mothers that are pregnant, and maybe it's addiction, maybe it's poverty, maybe it's an abusive relationship like my situation, whatever it is. If you feel I want to give this child life and I want better for my child than this, the first thing I would want them to know is that you are worthy. God gave this child to you and trusted that you would do what is best for this child. And the second thing is that when you enter into an adoption agency or even private adoption, I know I felt really unworthy to be asking any questions to these people, because they had been home studied and background checked and they had jobs, and I'm asking you potentially to raise my kids. So who am I to even ask if you're qualified? But that was the completely wrong way to work at it. It was that there are 2 million hopeful couples in America that would like to adopt. And if I had just looked at this from the perspective of dating, where when you're looking to enter into a marriage, you want to know, what are our communication styles? How do we want to resolve conflict? What do we want this relationship to look like? What's my role? What's your role? We should be taking it 10 times more seriously in the realm of adoption, because now there's already a child involved. And guess what? You're stuck with me.
I think that's kind of what people assume that the system does for them, correct?
In what capacity?
Like, when you look at let's say an adoption agency, you assume that they have the child's best interest in mind.
Sure. Well, in the context of at-birth adoption, rather than, for example, from the foster care system, you get to choose the family that you place with. They're not randomly matched. So I met with my daughter's adoptive
But they're not vetted through a system?
Through an adoption agency.
They're vetted through an agency.
Yes. Well, so agencies yes. So some people are in the foster care system where they're also, that's state money. So this kind of goes back to the money thing. I think you're right on what you said. I think that a lot of people trust that the system does this for me, whatever the form of the system is, be it an agency or the state.
Yep.
The problem is that there's money involved either way. So for them, this is quite literally a job description role. My job as your mother is to make sure that if this is what we're going through with, that I'm placing you with somebody that I can trust to raise you in a way that I want you to be raised, and can teach you the things that I would want you to know, and can love you as much as I will, and also is going to honor whatever relationship I want this to look like. Some women, it's too hard and they want a closed adoption. Like, I can't take that pain. I can't continue this contact. Other women want a very open adoption, and that was me. I wanted to be an active part of her life because my desire from the beginning was to raise her.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many people on the podcast that have, I would say, horror stories of having a closed adoption. They're the result of a closed adoption.
Yeah.
There's a lady who was on my podcast. She wrote a book. You know what? Some of these people would be really cool to put you in contact, or
That would be
to have you guys connect. Yeah. She wrote a book, and I believe she's from Chicago, but she was placed in a closed adoption, and she spent a lot of time in her adulthood looking for her real family. And her mom didn't want anything to do with her when she found her.
Yeah, that
was terribly sad. There was another guy I had on the podcast. He lives in, I think, North Carolina or South Carolina, and his family put him up for adoption as well. Come to find out, his mom was a professional ice skater.
Wow.
And she got pregnant when she was like 19, and it was like highly frowned upon back then to, you know, get pregnant out of wedlock. And so they placed him up for adoption. And then so it sent him on this whole path. He literally wrote a book about it, about how he kept chasing these breadcrumbs, trying to discover who his family was.
Right.
Finally found them, and she was dead. I mean, they had died. His parents have died. And then I think he had siblings, but they kind of disowned him a little bit as well.
And see, this is why, so now we know that open adoption is always what's in the best interest of the child, regardless of people's selfish desires. If you placed and you don't want contact, in my mind, I don't care what you want. Like, it's personally, I don't. You decided to make the decision to give this child life, and it is your responsibility to do what is best for that child. And if you really don't feel that you're what's best for that child, then maybe there's a conversation to be had there. I've heard also on the flip side of that coin, I've heard horror stories from adoptive families that I've worked with about the birth mom or the birth dad, or I say natural instead of birth, just it feels objectifying to say birth, but the natural family going out of their way to make the adoptive family's life a living hell, trying to get their child back. There has to be boundaries in any healthy relationship. So we can't justify away that behavior by saying this is how the law should have to work. It's just that we need law that supports what's in the best interest of the adoptee always. And right now, the chasing breadcrumbs thing, I have adoptees tell me all the time, like, it took me years to find my adoptive family. It shouldn't be that way. That information is on public record with the agency or the lawyer that was placed. Why do we make it hell for adoptees to get a copy of their original birth certificate or to know who their parents are? This is a part of their identity. And it's a part of their identity that they should have the autonomy to decide if they would like to have a relationship with.
I like that you bring that up, because I was in foster care. I was adopted when I was 11, and I guess it was considered a closed adoption because my mom wasn't able to have anything to do with us until we were 18.
Sure.
But when I was 18, I'm like, I want to find her. So I did everything I could to try to find her. But the thing is there's no resources available for people that are looking for their adopted families. And I'm like, why doesn't the agency have something, like, why don't they have like a packet of information that they can hand me when I turn 18 to say, hey, here's your case. These are like the names that your family went by. Maybe here, like, go look at this resource to try to like find people. Like, I literally just had to scrub the internet for assumed names of like what I thought my mom's name would be, like middle and last. I was young, I don't remember. Right. And other family members as well. It was horrific. The only way I was able to find her was I remembered my aunt's I think I remember her last name or something, my mom's sister. And I just looked on Facebook, and this is again before Facebook is as big as it is now.
Sure.
And so I just typed her name on Facebook, found some random lady. I'm like, this lady looks like she would be my aunt, but she lives in Virginia. And last time I checked, she lived in Michigan. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna send her a message and see what happens.
Wow.
And I sent her a message, and I'm like, hey, I'm David, looking for my mom, blah, blah, blah. Explained who I was. And next thing you know, she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Like, your mom would be so happy. And then she connected us. It was a happy moment. But had it not been for me, like just deep diving, that would have probably never happened.
It also shouldn't have to be that heart drop moment, though. You know what I mean? Like I mean, in the context of my adoption, like I'm so glad that you found her, and that makes me happy. But these reuniting stories crush me at the same time, because children shouldn't have to wait that long to discover who they are. A lot of children get that sense of self-identity from their parents. I know even in the context of my adoption, after I lost my mom to her addiction and my dad later went on to remarry, she adopted me. So very different than foster care or at birth placement. However, it's still, I wrestled with like, okay, is she my mom or do I have two moms? And what is my relationship with her supposed to look like? How do I honor my mom and not disrespect this woman who would like to be a mom figure to me? And children shouldn't have to navigate those feelings. It is the responsibility of the adult to make children feel that it is acceptable to be loved by anyone who wants to love them in a healthy way. And it's an ego thing is what it is.
That's a super good point, because I remember growing up, I struggled with identity because I look Hispanic, but my adopted family, they were Caucasian. So I was the odd duckling in the family.
Yeah.
And people would be like, are you like, what's your nationality? Like all the time. And my dad was from Honduras, but I didn't know what my nationality was, because the last time I had seen him, I was 3. And so I was kind of like, I don't know, I just felt like I didn't really know even who I was. And again, that's another crazy story where I did 23andMe and I was able to find him. But
wow.
Yeah, it was.
The technology has made it at least a little bit easier, but it still shouldn't have to be like a hunt that children have to go on. My openness agreement was supposed to be a minimum of 6 in-person visits per year with photos and updates monthly. And at the bottom of it, it said that we had hopes for this being just the foundation of the relationship so that it could grow and develop organically from there. But that was the floor of what we were agreeing to. And it was when my daughter was 4 years old that they decided, hey, it was when she was 3, they said, hey, we're moving out of the country. Sorry, not sorry. Now we're doing FaceTime visits instead of in person. And I was just the punching bag, and I had no legal authority. So I never felt like I could say anything. It took me until she was 5 that I decided I'm not going to walk on eggshells anymore. Because if they're going to take her, they're going to take her. And I'll be damned if she doesn't know that I fought like hell.
Wow. And how long ago was this?
They moved her to France so they moved her out of the state to plan for moving out of the country when she was 3. And then when she was 4 is when they went overseas to France. And it was when she was 4 turning 5. It was like she was 4.5 when they said, hey, we can't do 6 FaceTimes anymore. We need to do 4. And that's when I was like, respectfully, no. Sorry, like I'm not going to have this conversation with you. We need to get the agency involved to mediate. This isn't what I agreed to. I've been flexible. I've been more than understanding. You literally moved my child out of the country. You can suffer with 2 extra FaceTimes that you don't want to do. Like, are you kidding me? And so, yeah, they ended up saying, what were their words? When I got the agency to mediate, they didn't like that I was calling them out on the broken promises. What they were actually struggling with, that they have admitted, was the behavioral outlashes that happen after visitations. And this is frequent even with supervised visitation. For example, if you have children in the foster care system that get supervised visitation with their parents while mom or dad is being rehabilitated from whatever it is, it's very common for children to have these behavioral outlashes afterwards because they don't know how to process their emotions. So it's a bodily reaction instead of how we can talk through things. They didn't know how to handle that. They're not great at communication in general, let alone with a 3-year-old that doesn't know how to communicate. And they then turned around and called me dangerous and manipulative for using their words against them to propagate my agenda to have a relationship with my daughter, null and voided the entire openness agreement, and said that I could then talk to her twice a year. So they revoked another 2 visits just because I hurt their feelings. But I don't even know if that will happen because one of the videos I posted about, I called them negligent for ignoring the advice of professionals in the industry. And my daughter's adoptive mom saw that, and I haven't heard from them since.
Wow. And how long ago was that?
That was the day after her birthday of this year. So it was her birthday is July 10th. And I had talked to her on a FaceTime. And on that call, she was crying because she wanted more time with me. And she wanted to talk to me. And I had to be respectful because, of course, her adoptive parents are right there mediating this FaceTime. So I just remember saying, baby, I love you and I'll always be here for you any day, any time. Like, I will answer the phone at 1 a.m., but you, mom and dad, have to decide that. And I promise you I will be here for all of the calls. But I screen recorded that because I want her to know that this was never my decision. This isn't what I agreed to. I have gotten the agency involved. I've gotten the CEO of the agency involved. But ultimately, open adoption was not legally binding in 2019 at the time of my placement, and my hands are tied.
So there's nothing that can be done.
Technically, no.
Unless laws change.
Even then, they technically won't, what's the legal terminology? Where they go back and they'll enforce things. If a law changes sometimes and they're like, oh, this should have been changed a while ago, sometimes they'll backdate it so that anybody affected in X amount years prior, it also can help. But in my case, no.
Wow. So she is well aware that you're her mom.
She does know that.
And she obviously wants to be a part of your life.
Yes, she does.
And they actively try to keep her away.
Her adoptive mom is terrified of me. And they use these labels that my dad had told them about that I don't even have on my record to justify lack of participation. But it all goes back to accountability. It's like,
wait, your dad's in communication with them?
He was. He's not anymore, to my knowledge. I don't think so anyways. But he had told them that this was really what was best for my daughter because of these illnesses that I had, these mental illnesses that I had, again, are not on my record. So I think that it probably made them afraid. I think that he probably overshared things that he had no right to share to begin with about my background and upbringing that led them to feel that I was somehow a threat to their position in her life. And ultimately, it really boils down to we just didn't have the same definition of adoption. For them, it was this becomes our child and we'll allow you to see her and get updates. For me, adoption is we are now one family united in love of this little child. And yes, you have legal authority. You are the ones that get to choose how discipline happens, sporting activities, school, all of that. Like that is, I've trusted you with that. But it doesn't diminish what my role and the effects that I can also positively have in this child's life.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big firm believer that the parents need to be involved, even if you're not a great parent. I think it's important for the child to see like, oh, this is who I came from. Mm-hmm. And it's a good opportunity for them to learn, like, do I want to be like this person? And then, I mean, there's traits that your daughter has that you have.
It drives them nuts too.
And I'm sure it does, because they're probably like, oh my gosh, she talks just like her. She argues just like her.
No, it's true. I mean, it's hard to, like, I was a lawyer in a past life or something like that. And it's why they just shut down. Like, they just like, I don't want to deal with it because I don't want to acknowledge that these are the things that I said and agreed to. And now I'm just deciding that I don't want to honor those anymore.
Yeah, they wanted you to just lay down. That's crazy. Wow, that's so insane to me. I have a similar situation where I have a child that I don't have anything to do with. And there was nothing I could do about it. And I guess I could explain that real quick because people.
I was gonna say people who don't know would be good.
Yeah, I do talk about it in the podcast, but there was a girl that I dated in high school that got pregnant, and she, again, bad choices. But she was dating somebody else when that happened, and she told the dad that it was his child, the other guy that it was his child. So the first year or so, I just kind of kept an eye on things like on social media with pictures and whatnot, and seeing that I was like, this baby looks just like my baby picture. And so I even asked my ex, I'm like, do you think this child looks like me? And she's like, yeah, I think it does. And so I reached out to her. I'm like, do you think it's a possibility that he's my child? And she's like, no, it's not. And a couple months go by, or maybe even a year at this point, and I ask her again, I'm like, are you sure? Like, this really resembles my toddler picture now. And I sent her the picture, and she's like, I actually do think that he's your child. And I don't think at this point they were together anymore, but I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, I want to get a paternity test. I want to know, and I want to be a part of his life. I want to establish some rights as a father. And she got scared because I'm assuming her life wasn't in the best. She wasn't in the best position. She didn't have a good job, and I had a great job. Had a stable environment and whatnot. Well, she backed out. She would not do the test. She started ignoring me, and eventually, her mom got a hold of me and was like, "Hey, I have him for the weekend. I'll do a DNA test on him if you get the test."
Mm.
And so I ran the test over to her. She did the swab. I sent in it. I didn't even meet him. I gave it to her. She came outside. She went inside, did the swab, and then she brought it back out, and I sent it in. Got the test back, and it was 99.999% mine. And so immediately went and hired a lawyer and took her to court to try to establish rights. But so Michigan has a statute of limitations law to establish paternity rights, and you have till the child is 3 years old to do so. And he had turned 3 in January. I got the test results. I did the test on Valentine's Day of that year. And then I got the test results back like towards the end of the month. And we went to court like in April or May or something like that. So
it's crazy to me that there's not some form of like failure to inform that intercedes with that statute.
You would think, but I think I have a friend that's a lawyer that said that was recently like overturned or changed. That law was changed. So I have to look into that. But he's now 12, 13 years, almost 13 years old. So, and he was 3 at the time when I found out.
Yeah. Well, so I really strongly disagree with this, and it's predominantly women that do this. I'm not afraid to admit that. But I have my oldest daughter who I placed for adoption. And then I have my just turned 5-year-old daughter with another person. And then I have my son and his dad. So not something that I'm proud of. However, I chose to reproduce with all 3 of them. Okay. So not planned pregnancies, obviously, but you get what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. Because I was unwilling to risk my daughter's safety so much so with my oldest daughter, I also terminated my rights to make sure that I knew she was safe. So now we're on an equal playing field because it takes 2 to tango. I had the same sacrifice that he had. He doesn't raise her. I don't raise her. And then my middle daughter, never in my life have we been to court over her. He is a great guy. He's not my guy, but he's an amazing father. And every time, like, he's here at my house for her birthdays, for Christmas, like, come over. I don't care. Like, I'll cook, bring presents, like, do your thing. I know how important my dad was to me, even as dysfunctional as he was at some points in my life. Like, you're 100% right. Children need access to the people that make up parts of their identity, regardless of if it's so that they can decide, this is something I really want to imitate from my dad or my mom, and this is something that I shouldn't do. I see this differently. Whatever it is, like, he is her dad, and my son's dad, that is his dad. I will never take those babies from them because they're safe people. Doesn't matter if I agree with them on everything or not. That's not my prerogative to make that my children's problem.
That's such a good point, because a lot of people, especially when you go through like custody battles or a breakup or anything like that, they assume one party could assume, and it happens so often. That's why you end up with custody battles, that parent or that person deserves to have all the rights, and the other parent doesn't deserve to have any.
Right. It's still so women dominated too. I mean, I have an old friend whose wife just recently left him. And she just one day while he was at work left a note on the counter, emptied the bank account in the apartment, took their kid and left. Gosh. And because they were married, the courts said, or the police said, well, we can't go get your son back because you don't have a parenting arrangement. And he was like, it's my wife. Why do I need a parenting arrangement with somebody that is demonstrating this unstable pattern of behavior? And they're just like, well, because the state says that because you guys are married, either of you could have the child, even with all of this proof that he's like, I didn't consent to her running away with my kid or all of my belongings and finances. But it's just that the law doesn't actually support what's in the best interest of the child. It's lots of dated policies. It's where are the tax dollars allocated? It's whatever's easiest for them.
Yeah, they only really care when you're not together anymore and you have to pay child support.
It's true, and it goes back to money because they get a like
Yeah.
that's, debt collector.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I've witnessed people who've tried to end child support and the people at the front of the court are like, "No, you don't need to do that."
Yeah, that's just wild to
It
me.
is crazy.
Honestly, I'm the minority though. If my kids' dads came to me, I would be the one paying them child support. So, I'm actually glad that we've kept the courts out of it for that reason.
I think it's important if you can come to terms and agreements with people, and especially the parent of your child. I mean, you shouldn't have to get a court involved.
No, not at all. And also, why I feel like it's also subliminally teaching children that you need a mediator for it, that we can't talk about these things, which
Yeah.
doesn't feel like a healthy form of communication.
Yeah, I agree. So you're working with is it, would you call it like an advocacy group?
It's a nonprofit organization,
Okay.
Unplanned Good.
Okay. So what is the mission of Unplanned Good?
So, Unplanned Good is a nonprofit dedicated to legal reformation in the adoption system on a state level to change laws that support the birth mother and adoptee more fairly than the current system represents in most states. Not as to say that there are not some good laws out there, but there are certain things that need to change. For example, most birth mothers or mothers considering placement don't know that they have the right to their own attorney. And so, therefore, they use the attorney provided by the agency. But that attorney also represents the adoptive family, which is inherently a conflict of interest to have the same attorney representing two different parties.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So that's just one example. There's several on there. We want to make post-adoption contact agreements legally binding in all 50 states. Right now, I think our last board meeting, we were told that it's 27 of them that have, that policy work at the top button. We'll list some of them, but that's our website.
Okay. Safe haven babies, fetal development education.
Yeah, so adoption's also not taught in like the sex ed classes in schools. The public education system when they do the sex ed class?
Yep.
So they teach about parenting and contraception. Lots of times they'll also teach about abortion too, but they don't teach you about adoption. And so it's called the third option, and it's much more intricate than just that. But we want adoption to be something that's taught in schools so that people don't feel like their only way out of parenting is an abortion if they do find themselves facing an unplanned pregnancy.
Do you know, I'm curious to know, do you know what the statistics are of adoption?
It's very low. I don't know if I'm sure that it's like state by state varies, but I do know that there is an alarmingly low number of women that place for adoption twice. I feel like it's largely related to how traumatizing the experience is and how heavily influenced it is. There's what's it called? Adoption. Have you ever heard the term adoption tourism?
Yeah, actually have.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Okay. So Utah is a really big state for this, where there's a position called facilitators. And what it is these people, some of them are licensed, some of them are unlicensed. We're trying to ban unlicensed facilitators. But these people go out and find women facing unplanned pregnancy, lots of them in very vulnerable situations, and offer to fly them out to Utah, where they put them up in a hotel or an Airbnb, and they have some sort of budget allowance for food and things that they need during the pregnancy, of course, cover their medical expenses as well. And then when the mother goes to deliver, if the mother were to say, I can't do this, I want to keep my child, the agency then turns around and slams them with a $40,000 bill. And okay, this is what you owe us for your baby if you want out of this. And oftentimes that, of course, leaves women in a situation where their hands are absolute, like, I don't have 40 grand. So you're telling me that you're just going to take my baby. And that's adoption tourism. It's a really horrific concept. But that on a much less extreme level happens a lot in adoption even today. I remember being told, I was very transparent with the agency out of the gates up front. I don't know that I want to do this. I'm still looking for a way to feasibly keep my daughter and know that she will be safe with me raising her. And they told me, okay, well, that's fine, but just know that like some of these things that we might offer to pay for, you may owe us for if you decide to parent. And at the time I had like Medicaid. I was a kid that was working as a server or something like that. And so I was like, I don't care. Like, you're not going to change my mind with something like that.
That's insane. Yeah, that's crazy. There's so many horrific stories that surround adoption and even abortion. I was watching this show. I don't know if you've heard of it. I'm trying to think of the name of it now. It's I think it was on TLC, and it was this abortion clinic down in the South, and they were supposed to be doing these abortions, and I think they were late term abortions.
Oh,
And
that surprises me.
And instead of doing these late term abortions, they were forcing these women to have the child, and then they were selling them on the black market all over the United States. And so the show, it traced down all these people that were sold into this illegal adoption world or whatever. And they came on the show, and they were searching for their adopted families, and their adopted families had no idea that they were alive.
Their families that like their natural families, the ones that had them.
Yeah, their natural families. They had no idea, and it's sad. It's very sad. Actually, there was one lady in particular that lives in Michigan, where I'm from, and I'm actually friends with her on Facebook. I need to reach out to her to have her on the show, but
no, that's wild. That's absolutely crazy. I can't even fathom. I mean, even just my story is unfortunately not unique. There's lots of women who go through this thinking that they're going to have this open adoption, and they have hopes and aspirations for this beautiful relationship with their child and the child. I wanted a relationship with my daughter's adoptive family too. It wasn't just my daughter. I wanted to love and appreciate and respect the people that were raising her. Unfortunately, they've absolutely bit themselves in the ass with that. Like, not a chance in hell now. But
well, it's also a shameful thing, like you had mentioned in the beginning, that putting your daughter up for adoption, you're admitting that I cannot take care of her myself. It's kind of a shameful thing. So for you to like want to speak up, I'm assuming most women don't want to speak up about it because they're ashamed of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it took a long time to figure that out, because even though yes, I would have changed the circumstances of my pregnancy, because in an ideal world, I would be just co-parenting with him too. It was a safety concern. I think that there is a lot of shame, but also the act of placing a child for adoption is really my weapons are down, I surrender to the adoptive parents. So knowing that they're in the position of having all legal authority and still making the intentional decision to manipulate the situation in their favor because of insecurities or pride is just, that's a character issue. And the biggest fundamental issue that I have is that if I had known that that character issue existed, I would have known that those were not people that I trusted to raise my child. Because if you can't honor your promises and your word, and if your pride and your ego gets in the way of having healthy conversation and communicating through difficult things, those are all behaviors that I do not want my daughter to learn for the sake of her relationships when she's an adult.
I think it's pretty evident how much you care about your daughter and how much you want to be, I guess, reconnected with her. I've done a simple search on Google of just your name, and you're the first one that pops up with a bunch of episodes, different podcasts. And I'm like, there's no doubt in my mind that how old is she again? 12?
6.
6. Okay. Sorry.
You're 12.
You're right. She's 6. There's no way that she's not going to see that. If she knows your name at all, she's going to Google it, and she's going to see these videos. And she's gonna know how much you care and how much you're fighting to try to be a part of her. That's why they're so afraid, because you have a voice and you're a strong person.
You know what's, and I would send this to them in an email if they've asked me to not communicate with them. Quite literally, I would stop I would continue what I'm doing in the world of changing laws for adoption. But if they came to me after this call, if they saw this live streamed and came to me after this call and said, we were wrong, we're sorry, and we want to maintain just the floor, and we can't do anything more than that, but we want to maintain the floor of this relationship, I would stop the negative talk track about how toxic this relationship and the distribution of authority and power and adoption is. And it would just be, how can we make it better? But until my baby knows that she can have a relationship with me and can make those decisions, like, I will raise hell and high water.
I mean, and if anything, it's a record. It's a pretty clear record that you're trying, that you are not giving up, that you're here fighting for her. So,
Yeah.
um, I guess so. We're creeping up on an hour. If there's anything that you wanted to say to your daughter right now, what would it be?
I love you. Your adoptive parents are not bad people, and they love you very much. They think they're doing what's right, and I will always, always be here for you until my final breath. And I hope that one day we can restore that relationship because your brother and sister miss you and love you to pieces.
Oh, it's so sad. That breaks my heart. Well, I hope that one day, or hopefully soon, very soon, that you guys can be reconnected. It's a shame that you guys that has ended. But hopefully that does happen.
Thank you. That's my hope. Hopefully, so you find out some good news and can be the dad that I know you want to be to your other kiddo too.
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 other kids, and they know about him.
Yeah.
So it's like it's not a huge secret.
Right. No, it's funny that we're in such similar situations for different reasons, but it's just interesting.
It is interesting. And it's also a testament that you don't have to allow those circumstances also to tear you down. You can choose to not dwell on it in a negative way, but allow those circumstances to help propel you and to make changes and to be a better person and to help other people that are in the same situations.
Right. Because likewise, you Google your name and your kid's going to be like, my dad was cool.
My kids think I'm cool. They're like, Dad, you're famous. You're on YouTube. I'm like, dude, I have like 520 subscribers. I'm not famous.
I love it.
Yeah, it's funny. They're like, Dad, when you get a gold plaque or whatever on YouTube, then you can hang it in your studio. And I'm like, that's a long ways.
Let's just skip straight to the Hollywood star with your dad.
Yeah.
I think that's the next mile marker.
I would love to achieve that. That'd be awesome.
Heck yeah.
Well, thanks again for doing the podcast. I definitely want to do it again. You have so many accolades that I want to talk about with your businesses. I didn't realize that an in-person interview was an option, so we'll have to keep that on the table.
Sounds good.
We'll keep in contact regarding that. So thanks again for doing the podcast. And is there any last things that you want to talk about, promote, or mention?
I think we'll save it for like a whole series. You're right. You and me could talk forever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the first interview is always kind of like a moment of like getting to know each other and like how we converse. So it's just a learning game. But yeah, this was good. I enjoyed it.
Me too. Thanks so much. It was great to see you again. And we'll for sure connect so that we can figure that out.
For sure. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.